What if I told you that the kindest man on television had a secret locked away in his desk drawer for decades? A secret so powerful that when it was finally discovered, it left everyone who read it in tears? For over 30 years, Fred Rogers walked into his office, sat at his desk, and never once opened that locked drawer in front of anyone. His colleagues noticed it. His producers saw it. But nobody dared to ask what was inside. Until one day, after he was gone, someone finally turned that key. What they found wasn't what anyone expected. It wasn't a scandal. It wasn't something dark or twisted. What they discovered was something that would shake you to your core and make you question everything you thought you knew about kindness, forgiveness, and what it truly means to be human. Stay with me because this story is about to change the way you see the world. Before we get to that locked drawer, we need to understand who Fred Rogers really was. Because this man wasn't your typical celebrity. He wasn't in it for the fame or the money. Fred Rogers was born in 1928 in Pennsylvania. As a kid, he was overweight, shy, and bullied relentlessly. Kids called him Fat Freddy. They teased him, excluded him, and made his childhood pretty miserable. But instead of becoming bitter, instead of seeking revenge, young Fred learned something profound about pain. He learned what it felt like to be invisible, to be hurt, to need someone to see you. That experience shaped everything he would become. He went to college, studied music composition, and was planning to go into seminary to become a Presbyterian minister. But then, one day in 1951, he saw television for the first time. And he hated it. He saw people throwing pies at each other, slapstick comedy, and chaos. He thought, this is terrible. But this medium, this could be used for something good. So he changed his entire career path. He went into television with a mission, to use this powerful medium to speak directly to children, to tell them they mattered, to help them navigate the confusing world of emotions. In 1968, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood premiered nationally. For the next 33 years, Fred Rogers would tape over 900 episodes. He wrote all the songs, created the characters, and personally responded to every single letter sent to him by children. We're talking thousands of letters. He read every one. He answered every one. But here's what's important. Fred Rogers wasn't acting. This wasn't a persona he put on for the cameras. The man you saw on TV was exactly who he was in real life. His colleagues said he was the same Fred whether the cameras were on or off. He woke up every morning at 5:30 a.m., prayed for everyone in his life by name, went swimming, and maintained the exact same weight, 143 pounds, for most of his adult life. Why 143? Because it represents the number of letters in I love you. That's the kind of man he was. Everything about him seemed perfect, almost too perfect. Which is why that locked drawer became even more mysterious. In Fred's office at WQED, the Pittsburgh TV station where Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was produced, there was a large wooden desk. Beautiful, sturdy, classic. And in that desk was one drawer that was always locked. People noticed it over the years. Producers would come in for meetings, staff members would drop off scripts, colleagues would chat with Fred at his desk. And that one drawer, always locked, never opened. Some people were curious. Was it personal documents? Old scripts? Maybe family photos he kept private? But nobody asked because Fred Rogers had this presence about him that commanded respect without ever demanding it. You just didn't pry. His assistant, who worked with him for years, said she never saw him open it. Not once. He had the key, presumably on his keychain, but he never used it in front of anyone. When Fred died on February 27, 2003 from stomach cancer, the world mourned. Grown adults who had watched his show as children wept openly. His funeral was attended by thousands. People left flowers, notes, and cardigan sweaters at memorials across the country. But back at the office, his colleagues and family had the difficult task of going through his things, deciding what to keep, what to archive, what to donate. And then someone remembered the locked drawer. There was a moment of hesitation. Should they open it? It felt like a violation somehow, even though he was gone. But they also knew that whatever was inside might be important. It might be something that needed to be preserved or dealt with. So they found the key. And with a mix of curiosity and reverence, they opened Fred Rogers' locked drawer. Inside the drawer, there were letters. Dozens and dozens of letters. But these weren't fan mail. These weren't thank you notes from adoring parents or cute drawings from children. These were letters from Fred Rogers himself. Letters he had written but never sent. Letters addressed to people who had hurt him, betrayed him, disappointed him, or caused him pain. But here's where it gets chilling. Here's where it gets absolutely devastating. Every single letter was a letter of forgiveness. Let me repeat that. Fred Rogers had a drawer full of letters forgiving people who had wronged him. People who probably didn't even know he was hurt. People who might have never apologized. And Fred, in his private time, wrote out his feelings, expressed his pain, and then consciously, deliberately forgave them. One letter was to a childhood bully who had made young Fred's life miserable. The letter acknowledged the hurt, the years of pain those taunts had caused. But it ended with forgiveness and even understanding, trying to imagine what that bully might have been going through to act that way. Another letter was to a colleague who had taken credit for Fred's work early in his career. Instead of bitterness, Fred wrote about how he hoped that person had found success and happiness. There were letters to people who had criticized his show, called him weird, said he was too soft or too slow. Letters to executives who had tried to cancel his program. Letters to people who had spread rumors or misunderstood him. And every single one ended the same way. With forgiveness, with grace, with an almost incomprehensible level of compassion. But here's the thing that broke everyone who read them. These letters were never meant to be sent. This wasn't Fred trying to get closure by confronting people. This wasn't him seeking acknowledgement or apology. This was Fred doing the inner work of forgiveness entirely for himself, and he would probably say, for God. When his wife, Joanne Rogers, was told about the letters, she wasn't surprised. She said Fred had talked to her about his practice of written forgiveness. It was something he had learned from a spiritual mentor years ago. The practice was simple but brutal. When someone hurt you, you write them a letter. You pour out all your feelings honestly. You don't hold back the pain, the anger, the disappointment. You acknowledge what they did and how it affected you, but then, and this is the crucial part, you write your way to forgiveness. You try to understand their perspective, you recognize their humanity, you consciously choose to let go of the resentment. And then you lock the letter away. You don't send it. Because the letter isn't for them, it's for you. Fred believed that holding on to anger and resentment was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. He understood that forgiveness wasn't about excusing bad behavior or saying, it's okay. Forgiveness was about freeing yourself from the prison of bitterness. But doing this work in private, with no audience, no recognition, no one even knowing you're doing it, that's a level of emotional maturity and spiritual discipline that most of us can't fathom. Think about it. In today's world, when someone wrongs us, what do? We post about it on social media. We tell our friends. We build a case for why we're right and they're wrong. We seek validation for our hurt feelings. Fred Rogers did none of that. He processed his pain in private, extended grace in secret, and moved forward without burdening others with his grievances. His producer, who worked with him for over 20 years, said she had no idea Fred did this. She knew him as one of the kindest people she'd ever met, but she had assumed he just didn't let things bother him. She didn't realize he was actively working through his pain in such a disciplined way. Here's what makes this story so chilling, so powerful. Fred Rogers was showing us that the person we saw on TV, that impossibly kind and patient man, wasn't a natural state. It was a choice he made every single day. He wasn't just born nice. He wasn't lucky enough to never experience pain or betrayal. He felt everything just like we do. He got hurt. He felt angry. He experienced disappointment. But he chose consciously and repeatedly to process those feelings in a healthy way and then let them go. That locked drawer was proof that Fred Rogers was human. He struggled. He hurt. But it was also proof that he was committed to living out his values even when no one was watching. You see, it's easy to be kind when everything is going well. It's easy to forgive when someone apologizes sincerely. It's easy to be patient when you're not frustrated. But Fred Rogers was choosing kindness even when people were cruel to him. He was extending grace even when no apology was coming. He was being patient with people who tested every ounce of his patience. And the most beautiful part? He never told anyone about it. This wasn't a PR move. This wasn't him trying to look good. This was genuine inner work that he never expected anyone to see. There's a quote often attributed to Fred Rogers. There are 3 ways to ultimate success. The first way is to be kind. The second way is to be kind. The third way is to be kind. Those letters prove he wasn't just saying that. He was living it in the deepest, most hidden parts of his life. So what do we do with this information? How does this story change us? First, it's a reminder that everyone, even the kindest people you know, are fighting battles you can't see. Fred Rogers seemed serene and peaceful on the outside, but inside he was doing the hard work of processing pain and choosing forgiveness. Second, it shows us that emotional health isn't about never getting hurt. It's about what you do with the hurt. Fred didn't suppress his feelings, he acknowledged them fully in those letters. But he didn't let those feelings control him or define him. Third, it reveals that true character is what you do when no one is watching. Fred Rogers could have kept mental lists of grievances. He could have harbored secret resentments. No one would have known, but he chose differently because his values were genuine, not performative. Fourth, it teaches us that forgiveness is often more for us than for the person who hurt us. Those people Fred forgave probably never knew he was hurt. They definitely never knew he forgave them. But Fred was free because he chose not to carry the weight of resentment. And finally, it shows that becoming a good person is a practice, not a destination. Fred Rogers didn't wake up one day perfect. He had a system, a practice, a discipline. Every time someone hurt him, he sat down and did the work of processing and forgiving. Imagine if we all did that. Imagine if instead of venting on social media, we wrote letters we never sent, working through our pain in private and choosing grace. The story of Fred Rogers' locked drawer spread quietly after his death. It wasn't sensational news, it didn't make headlines. But for those who heard it, it changed something fundamental about how they saw the world. Because Fred Rogers proved that extraordinary kindness is possible. Not because some people are just naturally good, but because they make the difficult choice to be good. Over and over again. Even in private. Even when it's hard. Even when no one will ever know. That drawer full of letters wasn't chilling because it revealed something dark about Fred Rogers. It was chilling because it revealed how much work goes into being good. It showed us that the kindness we saw on TV for 33 years was the result of countless private battles with his own hurt feelings, all resolved with grace. It makes you wonder, what would the world look like if we all had a locked drawer where we processed our pain and chose forgiveness? What if we all did the inner work of letting go instead of lashing out? Fred Rogers once said, "When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, 'Look for the helpers.' You will always find people who are helping." But Fred Rogers didn't just look for the helpers. He became one. And not just on TV, but in every hidden corner of his life, in ways no one would ever see. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today.